Hello and welcome to the St. Maximus Society. We are making sure that we are live and then we're going to get started. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. If you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the stream. Yes, it does look like we are live. Let me turn down my volume. Apologies for that. We are still working through some technical difficulties as we expand the production and stuff. We are adding new equipment, so thank you for bearing with us. Father Maximus, tonight we're going to talk about conspiracy and demonic possession. It certainly seems like a very timely subject given the tumult that we see not just in America, around the world. You and I have had a conversation before, we were talking about different conspiracies and stuff. What, in your opinion, is the ultimate conspiracy that nobody's talking about?
I think the meta-conspiracy, the conspiracy that all other conspiracies derive from, has a very simple motive. It's very not complicated. It's very hard to get at the center of it for a variety of reasons. But it is the conspiracy that originates in hell with the devil, Satan, whose principal goal, his main goal, his only goal, is to blind us to Christ. Right. However he can do that, he's pleased. If he can do it with money, if he can do it with lust, if he can do it with politics, he's satisfied. Because it doesn't matter. Because if you're blinded to Christ and you don't obey Christ and you are not following the Christian path, nothing else matters. This world we live in, with all of its conspiracies and thoughts and plots, ends. So the great conspiracy is that conspiracy that was hatched. We were going to start in the Garden of Eden, but as we know, it was before that when the devil fell and took the angels, a third of the angels with him.
Exactly. So what we've done for this class, live audience, thank you for being here, our audience online, and fathers, what we've done is we've actually gone into the biblical text and showed various conspiracies that actually were existent in the Bible. A lot of this comes from, today we're celebrating the glorious beheading of the prophet and forerunner St. John the Baptist. And in the Matin services, it talks a lot about the conspiracy against the forerunner between, Salome and her mother. And what was interesting about the service, though, is that we're reading from a lot of Old Testament texts, conspiratorial texts, that are actually pointing to this very event. Right. So that's kind of why we got the idea. This, conspiracy is actually very biblical. It's grounded in the Bible. Father Deacon, we were going to start with a conspiracy in the Garden of Eden, but if you would read actually the conspiracy of Satan against God in Revelation, and then right into the one from Isaiah.
From Revelations, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and he cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. In Isaiah, thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of the voles of worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation, in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners?
And in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 3, 5, and 6, And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in that day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So, fathers, we see very clearly that the ultimate meta-conspiracy is that the devil wanted to be like the Most High, his throne above God, pride and jealousy, and his goal is to drag his creation down to hell with him. Father Nathan, is this something that you think a lot of people think about in the world today when they're looking at geopolitical situations, that there's a spiritual element and maybe even a biblical element to this, or would we be good to remember it? What are your thoughts?
A lot of people tend to forget that.
Yeah.
They tend to see our enemies as being the
It's that
politically
president
strong.
or it's this, yeah.
Exactly, and they forget the words of St. Paul that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual powers,
Yeah.
against wickedness in high places. So, we tend to forget about this altogether.
What can we do just to remind ourselves of the spiritual warfare? Because there's been a lot of geopolitical events. We're going to get into that. But like you said, it seems that, and even Father Maximus and I were talking, even in the Orthodox sphere, there are people very much pointing fingers. They want revenge. They want, they're pointing what we would say is essentially at maybe not the wrong person, but there's a level above that. It's almost like the devil's so good at tricking us. He's like, put your attention over here.
Exactly.
There's no man behind the curtain.
Anyone who studies these things knows a magician, a stage magician, his most important skill, his greatest skill is misdirection. Because I'm doing something over here in this hand, I have to have people looking at this hand.
I was wondering what you were doing with your prayer rope
Exactly,
over there.
right? So I have people looking at this hand, and that is what the devil does. He has people looking at the circus, the never-ending, repetitive circus of what's going on in the world, which when we are baptized, we are rejecting the world. St. Paul tells us to reject the world.
Right.
Not creation, we've said this before, but the world. And people become so caught up in the vicissitudes of this life that the devil just has to run out the clock.
And
He doesn't have to do anything more except run out the clock.
And this is something that world governments have learned from the devil and practice actively. In George Orwell's 1984, they had the 5-minute hates regularly throughout the day, in which people were actively encouraged to focus their hatred on an external figure who is the cause of all your problems. Yeah. In one country, it's in Russia, it's the United States is the cause of all problems. In the United States, it's Russia, and so on it goes.
Father Deacon, it also is noteworthy in 1984 that it must be that the three big power blocks in that novel are always at war with each other. There needs to be a constant state of war. That certainly kind of resembles what's going on now. And you've talked before about other classes that a lot of the victims of these wars are Christians, especially Orthodox Christians. Maybe we'll just launch right into this, what Father Nathan was saying, the geopolitical situation of that country bad, that leader bad, this group bad. What are your thoughts?
Bad.
It's bad.
Dividing.
That's why we're doing this class. We're not trying for all the people out there that it's like, we know that it's bad. We're just trying to get everyone to understand that there's a level to this. There's a higher level to this.
It's like people who have a cold and they're focusing on their cold when they also have cancer.
Right.
Right? The cold, that's a problem. Cancer is the real serious problem.
Yeah.
And the fact is, the spiritual issue, if politics go bad, worst thing that can happen to you, you're tortured and killed. You're going to die anyway. But if you don't address the spiritual issues, you face an eternity in a bad place.
Father Deacon, why does the devil seem to need a constant state of war? Is it that he wants to kill us and drag us down to hell, or is it just confusion?
Well, distraction, really. When we're distracted by everything that's not centered around our salvation, that is the goal, right? So war is always a classic method of control. Always has been. The world has always been abused through different ways, and war, biological warfare, classical warfare. You have in certain philosophies and religions that are also quite oppressive, and all these things are meant to
class warfare.
Yeah, whatever it is.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Anything that's meant to control a person, right? To actually wrap this, insidious type of root around them, and the devil doesn't sleep. There's always the human soul that he's after, and in the soul, right, the nous, the heart, right, the intellect, these are the same kind of word, and he fills us with a lot of intellectualizing, you could say, thinking about this distraction, getting tossed in these minutia of geopolitics that at the end of the day, it's just barking going on from one side.
Father Maximus, is it part of the devil's plan to keep us angry at each other? It certainly seems that we live in an angry world. We have at least for 100 years, right?
Keeping a human being angry is the devil's greatest joy, because anger, anyone who's been angry or fought with anger clouds out everything else. It's impossible to be angry and not also feel justified, or prideful, and all these other things.
Because it gives you energy.
It gives you
it's like
energy
jet
and focus.
Fuel. Yes,
exactly. So if you can keep people angry, and the best kind of anger the devil can inspire is righteous anger. I have a right to do this.
Use your anger, Luke.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And
give
that,
into your feelings.
And then you can direct not just a person, but whole nations, like we were talking, whole civilizations can be focused and charged up by this anger to the point that when somebody says, wait a second, maybe we should pray, they laugh at them.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we see in American society when somebody gets shot up, which is all the time, and then someone says out thoughts and prayers, and people are, I don't want to hear thoughts and prayers or whatever, because it's become such an inane way of thinking about it. Right. But prayer is powerful. And in the midst of disaster, in the midst of misery and difficulty, that's when we're challenged as Christians. When everything is easy, and it's a nice Sunday picnic and people are praying and go, well, this is normal on earth. No, it's not. We're not here for a picnic. We're here for our faith to be tested. And our faith is tested during trying times. In every service, in peace, let us pray to the Lord, for the peace from above and the salvation of our souls.
Lord have mercy.
It's a precious thing, peace, but it's the internal peace that we have to focus on, because we can have external peace and still be, as you said, we can be filled with rage in a beautiful circumstance. But if we're filled with the inner peace, we all know stories. We're in the Russian church. We know stories about holy men who were in gulags.
Yes.
And they were filled with joy because they were praying and they were celebrating the liturgy. There's cases of Orthodox saints also in concentration camps, in the West. And also they were filled with joy. No one could take that joy away from them. So, I mean, in the midst of all this is what we have to do, is keep perspective.
Fathers, it seems to be, the Bible says that the devil is the author of confusion. And we live in a time where it's very difficult to discern the truth. Certainly, this is the entire point of George Orwell's novel of 1984, that no one really knows what the truth is anymore because it's being rewritten all of the time. It certainly seems that is one of the conspiracies that is going on now, that the truth itself has become, shaded. It's become obfuscated. Obviously, this is a plan of the devil, is it not?
Well, yeah, and we return to the idea that it doesn't allow the soul to change, the person to change. You can't have this metania, right, or this transformation, this prostration. You can't have that if you're filled with rage.
You can't repent if you're super angry.
Yeah,
right?
you can't focus really on anything else, and that's this distraction that's constantly going on.
Yeah.
I would say, though, I think one thing we do have to bear in mind, and it makes sense because we live in this time, I think we can tend to think that this time, there's certain objectively bad things about this time, there's no question about that, but many of these things, these abilities to change what people know, access to information, creating false mythologies, etc., that's old. That's not a new thing. I mean, so our forebears in the patristic age, they had to fight against a very established, falsified, mythological understanding of how the world worked. So it may be more extreme or more sophisticated now, but it's something that the church has always dealt with. Obviously, the Russian church had to deal with being in the Soviet Union, and where they managed to survive in the midst of a circumstance where there was a whole government department.
His father Nathan mentioned class warfare, like the doctrine of Marxism. It's the king that's bad, it's the rich people that's bad, it's the business owners that are bad. We see this today, let's be honest, it's the white people that are bad, it's the black, whoever it is, it's taking the attention.
It's as the psychologists will say, it's the other.
Yeah.
The
We're
other
trained
is
to
bad.
hate the other.
Right, and this is something where today, because of the recent events, we did, combined with liturgy, we did the prayer for the pacification of animosity and
It was
hatred.
very powerful.
And it's very important because it reminds us powerfully that if you're not praying for your neighbor and you don't love your neighbor, don't expect God to love you.
Well,
Right? Now, there's I post the elder, I think it's Elder Ephraim said, if you have no forgiveness, forget about heaven. Very simple.
And we talk every now and then about George Orwell's 1984, but let us not forget another beautiful anti-utopian novel, Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
Yep.
In which, as opposed to 1984, where the enemy is the government, and that's
Yes.
very clear to the reader, even if it's not immediately clear to the protagonist. In Ray Bradbury's work, the enemy is really self.
Yeah.
It's all about about people having renounced the good and the beautiful, having given up books, and having given themselves up wholly to mindless entertainment. Whole walls of TV screens surrounding you on all four sides with absolute dreck
It
going
sounds like a lot of
24/7.
restaurants I've been to.
Yes, exactly.
Or sports bar, maybe.
And so this is a warning, and it redirects our mind a little bit from the concept of an external enemy, a controlling government, and reminds us: wait a minute, wake up! Your own enemy, your greatest enemy, is really yourself and your own passions.
Totalitarian governments are remarkably good at that too.
Yes. Yeah.
I was watching a thing on the Ministry of Propaganda in Germany during World War II, and 70% of their product was light-hearted comedies, and so to keep people entertained, and then 30% was the propaganda. And we see that, and there's a phrase in English, bread and circuses. The Romans knew to keep people entertained.
We were just talking guns and butter.
Guns and butter.
Yeah.
This
This is like the great liberal, thing.
you
It's
know-
like what's so funny about that is it's not just the welfare state. We got to put in the warfare state too.
Well, they
It's
they
like,
go
okay.
together, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's a natural action of fallen man.
Yeah.
War is about resources, and people always are greedy and they want more resources, or they have to defend their country from greedy people who want their resources. But to expect somehow war to vanish without the return of Christ is impossible.
To those in the online audience, I believe we posted the Venmo link. Hopefully that's right. Yeah, we made almost $100 last time, and the good thing about that is it goes right to us. It kind of circumvents the platform that we're on. The man, yeah, exactly. Although we're very grateful to the platform that we're on.
we
We're never
love the
censored, and
man.
we can say all the words, and it's great. So, yes, if you please would. So you can still send super chats, all of that stuff. If you indicate that you Venmo'd, we will answer your question. We will stop what we're doing and answer your questions. Thank you so much for sacrificing. We know that $1 stretches a lot less than it used to. Let's talk about biblical conspiracy. When we were doing this research earlier, the Bible's really replete with these stories. We've already mentioned the ones, that happened in heaven, in the Garden of Eden, before the fall, that Satan is fallen, he's kicked down to earth, the spirits and principalities of the air that we must deal with, as Father Nathan was quoting St. Paul, but also just in living itself. Father Deacon, if you would, let's go back into Genesis, and Genesis 39, 12 through 18, we see that Joseph, right, is even dealing with these things right here. So let's go to this one, this conspiracy, which was actually brought up today during the service of the beheading of St. John the Baptist.
And she caught him by his garments, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garments in her hand and fled, and got him out.
Smart.
And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth, and she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in a Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice, and it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he had left his garment with me, and fled, and got him out. And she led up his garment in her, and unto the Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant, which thou hast brought unto us, came unto me to mock me, and it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me, and fled out.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, this is very much a theme of, the Old Testament biblical text, all pointing to the great betrayal of the forerunner, which is very, very interesting because, again, if you don't read the Old Testament in light of the New Testament, or you're not reading the Holy Fathers, let's be honest, you're really not going to see that, this is prefiguring whatever it is,
Absolutely.
Christ or anything else. We see also, actually, Father Nathan, if you would read from Judges 16 on the second page, we see a very similar story of Samson and Delilah from Judges 16.
If I could insert just briefly, the things we're reading right now might not sound much like conspiracies to many of our listeners. We're used to conspiracies having very ominous tones to them, black ops helicopters and these kinds of underground things going on in dark rooms and in wearing masks. And this is all very unexciting comparatively. So a conspiracy, as we're defining it here, appears to be any plot against someone who stands for what is good and upright.
And that's what the point of this class is. All conspiracy essentially emanates from that.
The legal definition of conspiracy is two or more people planning together to commit a crime.
Exactly,
a major crime. And the word conspiracy is to breathe together. So to conspire. So that sort of gets your sort of dark masks, whatever. So you're breathing together, one can imagine, in some dark place, planning and plotting against somebody.
The fathers actually, what's interesting about that last passage is the fathers actually say that it was Potiphar and his wife that were both trying to seduce Joseph. And it was, which is quite interesting. Yeah. And she got declined. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
again,
it was
nothing's
Egypt.
changed.
It was Egypt, so she's saying, well, they mocked us because, he wouldn't go along with it.
Again, we see that because you're alluding to the fact, we'll let Father read in a second, you're alluding to the fact of that plot began with pride.
Right.
And the same thing in the plot against the forerunner was the hurt pride of Herodias.
Exactly. And the other thing is this type of, let's just call it SE espionage, it leads to essentially where we are now. Most of the conspiracies have some East German actress that's sleeping with. We were just talking about this. So this is the oldest conspiracy. It's the use of the passions against mankind to sink them into hell.
Absolutely. I mean, that's very clear in the.
It's going to be very clear
beheading.
in this one.
Yeah.
So Samson and Delilah. Sometime later, Samson fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines went to her and said, "Entice him and find out the source of his great strength and how we can overpower him to tie him up and subdue him. Then each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me the source of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued."
There you go. So they're conspiring right there. Hey, go in and find out what his weakness. I just want to point out too that didn't Judas only get 30 pieces of silver?
Not a lot, but not a small.
Also not 1,100 from each of the people in the Philistines that were. I mean, she was pretty smart. She got a lot of money for that betrayal.
She did get much more than him. He got 30 pieces of silver, 30 denarii, which means like roughly 30 days worth of typical laborers' wages.
Right.
Even though they weren't really mostly paid in silver, but that's what they
Delilah
say.
got much more.
Delilah, women
in
are
the
smart.
end. Yeah, exactly. Let's actually go to, now we'll talk about the forerunner. Father Deacon, if you would read from Matthew 14, 6 through 11 right there. This is what we're talking about right here.
But when Herod's birthday was kept, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod, whereupon he promised with an oath to give her whatsoever she would ask. And she, being before instructed of her mother, said, "Give me here John Baptist's head in a charger." And
Maybe we should pause. So it was her mother, because she was
called out
for
being
It's a family affair.
woman of loose morals.
Right, yeah. She hated John because he called her out.
He dared call her out. He dared confront her with
So they're
the truth.
conspiring now, and let's finish it.
But another of the evangelists points out that the daughter straightway went to Herod, so with enthusiasm.
Oh, yeah.
She was completely on board.
Oh, she was
this.
in it. Yeah, they were conspiring together.
the influence
Salome
of
was-
mothers on
she
their
was
daughters.
Yes, we have to be careful about these things. Yeah.
And the king was sorry, nevertheless, for the oath's sake, and them which sat them at meat. And he commanded it to be given her, and he sent and beheaded John in the prison. And his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel. And she brought it to her mother, and the disciples came and took up the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus.
It's probably worth pointing out, too, that the then wife of Herod probably and most likely viewed John as a threat to their kingdom, right?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. This is why it's literally the ultimate conspiracy. It's man's kingdom is being threatened by something else, what can we do to get rid of this external
As
threat?
I said in the sermon today, this is a story befitting any modern horror movie. This is the gruesome, brutal beheading of this person, and then them playing with his head in this way, like a cat plays with a mouse,
Like a trophy,
right?
yeah.
But then you see in another version of the gospel, it talks about that Herod offers up to half his kingdom. And they're like, no, I want vengeance. So you see how arrogance, pride, and passion, she could have had half the kingdom.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
He apparently would have done whatever she said. But more than that, this is where certain passions sort of build. More than that, she wanted revenge. And not just revenge. She wanted revenge in this gothic, horrible way. And and we see in the person of Herod how sad this is. He couldn't even for a moment just say, no, honey, let's do something else.
Yeah.
How about some gold or something?
Sleep on it.
But he was, let's sleep on it. He was so proud in the presence of his cohorts, his friends, that he could not even do that. So we see these people, this is how people who are in the world and love the world, how ultimately, instead of ruling the world, they become ruled by the world. And this is for this girl's dancing. He's so impressed with some girl doing this dance that he's willing to destroy himself and his whole kingdom.
Yeah.
And they're also drunk too.
Sure,
so
yeah.
that sort of. And then we heard Saint Nikolai talks in the Synaxarion how the first wife of Herod,
right.
her father was a Arabian prince named Aretas. And Aretas, when he found out how the first wife was treated, came and conquered and exiled them to Spain. Right, so these three troublemakers
That's
are
what they
all
get. Yeah.
all in Spain, and then Saint Nikolai describes this again, this lurid, extremely horrible scene where apparently Salome goes out to.
This is the girl that was dancing.
Salome
yes,
is the dancing girl, and we see this her reference in many patristic texts. She's going out and she goes across this river, and the river is frozen, and she falls in a hole. So she's stuck in the river up to her neck, right? And she can't either fall into the river or get out of the river. She's there treading water. And St. Nikolai says this is like a bizarre, inverse mockery of her own satanic dance that she committed in with Herod. And then the ice comes and decapitates her.
Just
and they
an
bring
ice
her
float,
head to Herod on a plate. So,
we don't believe in karma, but that's karma.
We kind of do believe in karma for people who are not in the church, right?
Right.
Unless Christ destroys karma on the cross, but if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And Saint Nikolai starts that passage with saying, you can see how people die. You can see what sins that were most prevalent in their life.
Father Nathan, it seems to be with these stories, and we're going to go into some more, but the common element is there's obviously some wickedness going on, but there's definitely, as Father Maximos was saying, a slavery to their passions. Herod's drunk. He's, obviously excited by what's happening. And this is often a common fall of a lot of men, not just in biblical times, definitely today, definitely of politicians, even today, kings, rulers, all of these things. How does the devil know that it's our passions is the way to get us? Is that like his back door in?
Well, his back door, his front door, it's the way he works. He's been around for a long time. And this is why we fast, is in order to be in control of our passions. A passion, according to one patristic interpretation, one of the more common, is an exacerbation of a natural instinct. It's too much of a good thing. And so this is what the devil encourages, is to let our natural instincts run wild and take control of us instead of us being at the wheel.
Yeah, it's like the 60s, be free.
All
free
he has
love,
to do
everything,
is look at himself and his friends in hell. They're filled with passions as well.
Yeah.
They're not filled with, they don't have as much physical passion because they don't have bodies like us. But even then, you see in Scripture where they're fascinated with the bodies of pigs and human beings, and they possess human beings. So yes, they're not only the expert on human passions; they're the author of passions.
Yeah, we're going to actually get to that. The next section of this class is demonic possession of actually being in a reality and an explanation of a lot of the things that are happening right now. So not only are conspiracies real, it's the devil that's behind it and things that we need to be aware of. Father Deacon, if you would read actually, so we've seen the conspiracy against, holy people, God's holy people of old. Actually, let's do, we have Jezebel and Elijah. We see this in 1 Kings 2. I'll read that one, and then Father, if you would read John 11 right there, the conspiracy against Christ, and then also in Acts against the apostles. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as one of them by tomorrow about this time. So Elijah has just destroyed all of the priests of Baal at this time. And you see this wicked woman going and saying, you're going to die or I'm going to die, right? And then she ends up getting eaten by dogs, which is very interesting. But this Jezebel, she's an archetype, right? When you hear the term, you hear like a Delilah or a Jezebel or, a Potiphar's wife or whatever it is. These are things, they're stories that we have to remember because all of us can fall to this, right? Okay. Yeah, let's look at the conspiracy against our God and Savior.
From the Gospel of John. And one of them, Caiaphas, being a high priest that year, said to them, you know nothing at all, nor do you consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish. Now this he did not say on his own authority, but being a high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for that nation only, but also that he would gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. Then from that day on, they plotted to put him to death. Therefore Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there into a country near the wilderness, to a city called Ephraim, and there remained with his disciples.
Yeah. So we see this conspiracy prefigured in the Old Testament eventually, and of course all of them are against God, but we see this against God incarnate. If you would continue on in the book of Acts there, Father, thank you.
And then it was day, certain of the Jews banded together and bounded themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul.
I mean, that's a conspiracy, right? Say, we're going to be cursed, we're not going to do, that's pretty...
And we see this pattern here.
That's a ritual conspiracy right there.
These people behave the same way. There's nothing, King Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, what modern people need to be cognizant of. They're concerned about things, and rightfully so, but what does it mean? You can be stabbed with a stick, you can be beaten with a rock, or you can be blown up by a nuclear missile. In any case, you're dead.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's death. Death is what we have to be concerned about. And then spiritual death is the great enemy, like Father said, referring to, the quotation of St. Paul.
Exactly. Let's talk about, do you fathers have anything else to add to conspiracy? Father Nathan, you mentioned that some of these don't seem very conspiratorial, but when you kind of look at it through, the lens of the New Testament, now you see very clearly that it's a conspiracy against the Most High God, and even against when God becomes incarnate. The devil's always trying to destroy God's creation, right?
Well, and that's why it doesn't seem conspiratorial.
Yes.
We're used to conspiracies being concealed, being secret. We're not accustomed to the idea of an open conspiracy.
Right.
But frankly, conspiracy need have nothing secret about it. When we talk about conspiracy theories, we're talking about hidden conspiracies, behind closed doors.
Right.
Here we see open conspiracy against God and against His saints.
I would say that the devil's conspiracy is hidden in these lesser conspiracies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So
fair.
you're right. I mean, we hear this as the example of open conspiracies, or certainly they're reported to us through Scripture. But all these other lesser conspiracies, the ones that people think are the real problem, are just the devil is behind all of it.
Right.
The devil lurks behind it, and he manipulates it. And his greatest trick, something says the devil's greatest trick is to pretend that he doesn't exist. Right? I think that's from The Merchant of Venice or the Bible, one of those things. Probably The Merchant of Venice. But
right.
And of course, it says in Scripture that the devil often appears to be an angel of light.
Yes.
And we talked about like Marxism and classism. They often get people's attention by talking about real things, real iniquities.
And a lot of the times, they're not trying to conceal it. Like, Marx is very much writing openly about what he's trying to do. You see, these guys, Van Jones and, Michel Foucault and all these, great thinkers, of the 20th century. We wouldn't say that, but they very clearly write openly that we need to topple Christianity. We need to do these things, and we're going to do it by SE espionage, and we're going to do it by blackmail, and we're going to do it
whatever means possible.
By whatever means possible.
And again, my point was that the fact that oftentimes they're addressing real inequities, real problems.
Right.
The way people were treated in the 19th century, little children, forcing to workhouses, whatever, that was bad. And oftentimes hypocritical, Pharisaical Christians would support the status quo in ways that real Christians should have opposed. So this is where the devil is really clever, because he can get, particularly the youth, it's always the youth, old people don't want to do anything, they get the youth by pointing out real problems. And the problem is oftentimes we as Christians need to say, yeah, that's a problem. People should not be treated like that.
But you don't have the solution.
But the solution is always the same. The solution is always turning to Christ.
Yes.
That's always the same, because all other solutions are temporary.
Father Deacon, why does it feel like when something happens, like a famous person getting shot or something like that, the response is, oh, we'll pray. Why is there pushback on that? Like, oh, that's ridiculous. We want action. Is it because of this inability for, especially as Father's saying, young people to recognize that there is spiritual warfare all around us? What is that? Because it certainly seems to be among younger people that, like, oh, pray. There's like this demonic response to it.
They don't believe.
No, they manifest. It's like,
they don't believe.
Pray. It's like, dude, you're inhabited by a demon, It's like, come on.
They see it as some sort of hypocritical non-action because they don't believe prayer is real and they don't believe God is real.
Right.
So,
well, quite frankly, most of us are guilty of the same thing all the time. Prayer is the last thing we do instead of the first thing.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, all we can do now is pray. Oh, why didn't you do that in the first place?
Right. Father Deacon, why does it seem in the younger generations that it's so hard to get
inability to take action?
Okay. Because we're all lazy, because we're young.
Well, because we're enveloped in sin.
Oh,
and the sin, we're missing the mark, right? That's what the definition of it is. And again, I'm reminded of this dichotomy between metania, right, and kairos. Right, action, taking action, and there's a famous painting actually of Kairos and Methania as two angels, two youths, and one's holding a razor, like this razor that Kairos is holding, and it's this. If you do not take action, you are missing an opportunity, and the opportunity is that we are working on our salvation. We're actually working on this transformation of our soul, and so. This inability to pray, well, you can't do any transformation if you're not starting the first part of it.
St. Maximus the Confessor says, the demons that wage war on us through our shortcomings in virtue are those that teach unchastity, drunkenness, avarice, and envy. We certainly see a lot of those today. Those that wage war on us through our excessive zeal for virtue teach conceit, self-esteem, pride. They secretly pervert what is commendable into what is reprehensible. Father Maximus, I'd like a comment on that.
We see this. This is it. The devil wants to make whatever is good bad, and his greatest goal is to make people cynical, and hateful, and sad, and lose hope.
Is it? Sorry to interrupt. Is it possibly taking? You mentioned righteous anger earlier. Anger, which would really be directed at our own sinful. Selves, and saying, yes, this is good, tap into that, kind of like Father Nathan was saying, like, use your anger. Are the demons trying to do this?
Yes, because
there's a lot of angry people right now.
Right. According to the Philokaleic Fathers and following the Greek philosophers, man has multiple faculties, but he has two principal faculties. He has the appetitive faculty, the desire for things, and the insensitive faculty, which is anger. And the fallen anger is this. The only proper use, they say, for the insensitive faculty is being repulsed at evil. So it's to be repulsed at the action of the devil. And when we turn it into lesser things for political lesser things or personal things, then it is inherently distorted. It's inherently problematic. So yes.
So we've got to keep them at that meta level,
right? And you see, in the circumstance we find ourselves in the modern world, every political entity, it seems like, wants to keep people in a state of rage.
Yes.
Right? And okay, they're not necessarily...
The conspiracy theorists would say that's why they're assassinating people.
Well, here's the whole thing. The devil is very clever. A lot of these people are dupes. They're pawns. They don't know why they're doing things. They are, like drug dealers don't necessarily, they don't necessarily educate the people that they're giving the drugs to as to what the effect will be.
Right.
So I think what you have in the case is a system, the devil allows system to create it. He uses people's natural fallenness against them. And we have a circumstance where something happens, assassinations, wars, whatever, and they're built into this state of rage, and then the system feeds on itself. And people are encouraging each other to be outraged, and both sides act as if they have clean hands, and it's solely the other side. When in reality, it takes two to tango. Now, we're Orthodox Christians, so obviously we tend to find ourselves on the conservative side certainly when it comes to moral issues.
Sure.
When it comes to all the various social abortion, particularly
yeah.
various other things. But that doesn't mean that everyone else that agrees with us on those social issues is with us. We believe those things from a very definite Orthodox Christian perspective. We do not support people being in a circumstance where they're hating and raging on each other. We do not support people who are encouraging that. That is not what the Lord taught us.
Right.
He said at the end to Pontius Pilate, "Do you not know I could now call legions of angels? Yeah. If my disciples were of this world, then they would fight."
Yes.
Right? So, okay, sometimes we have to use the words of the Lord, apply them in particular circumstances. But this is what God said to Pilate. This is what Christ says to power. And whatever we do, whatever decisions we come to, we have to bear. That's the gold standard.
Something that we forget is that the demons themselves are God's servants, unwittingly and unwillingly.
Sure.
I have a great quote for that. You actually want to read it because I get tongue tied. It's a little long, but this is St. Maximus. Read 80.
The devil is both God's enemy and his avenger. He is God's enemy when he seems in his hatred for God somehow to have acquired a destructive love for men, persuading us by means of sensual pleasure to assent to the passions within our control, and to value what is transitory more than what is eternal.
Right.
In this way he seduces all our soul's desire, separating us utterly from divine love and making us willing enemies of him who made us. He is God's avenger when, now that we have become subject to him through sin, he lays bare his hatred for us and demands our punishment. For nothing pleases the devil more than punishing us. When he has been given leave to carry this out, he contrives successive attacks of passions inflicted against our will. And like a tempest, he pitilessly assails us, over whom, by God's permission, he has acquired authority. He does this not with the intention of fulfilling God's command, but out of the desire to feed his own passion of hatred towards us.
Wow.
So that the soul, sinking down enervated by the weight of such painful calamities, may cut itself off from the power of divine hope, regarding the onslaught of these calamities not as a divine admonition, but as a cause for disbelief in God.
Everybody read the second volume of the Philokalia.
Yeah.
It's so good. St. Maximus is so good.
I love that quotation.
Yeah.
I think that's the class right there. That's everything we need to say on one level. But that quote of God's enemy and avenger, that's from the Psalms.
Yeah.
That's, and so we see that the devil, I think oftentimes in Western thinking, the devil is presented as this sort of suave, debonair, God who actually kind of likes man and wants to free him. He is a psychopath. He is a serial killer.
Yes.
He's a pervert and a murderer. And we see, and he's really, really good at those things.
And he's really real.
He's really real. And so when we look in the world, and we see these things happening, and this is what I said, most of these people are dupes. Many of these people who are doing horrible things are convinced that they're doing this for good reason. They're deluded.
The image of Weston in C.S. Lewis's Perelandra is a very good picture of the devil incarnate.
Yes, there's also a great episode of The Old Twilight Zone where these monks capture the devil, and they have him locked up. And this man wanders into this castle, and the devil convinces him to let him go. And then, it talks about the normal sins that we do ourselves, but then the sins that the devil sort of exacerbates.
Father Deacon, you look like you had a thought there. I want to see what you
we talk about dupes, right? We're seeing these dupes in Ukraine, in these different Orthodox churches. We're seeing this within our own church.
Right.
One doesn't have to look far to see how often churches use as political soft power.
Yes.
For many different nations, including, unfortunately, a lot of these Eastern European countries. And so this demonic presence is not exclusive to people that are outside of the Orthodox Church. That is very real and very present everywhere.
It almost is a really good apologetic for why Orthodoxy is the true church, because you see it so much. You've seen it in Russia in the Revolution. You see it now in Ukraine. You definitely see it in Gaza. It seems like Satan is trying to wipe out Christ's body.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing people turn away.
Right.
They're taking a definitive stance that now we must turn away and change. So that's why we're seeing this influx into Orthodoxy.
Yeah, it's weird. As much as it gets attacked, that is the history of the church. It grows on the blood of the martyrs almost.
Always.
And because the devil is God's unwilling servant, this is why we see things like the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
Well, that was honestly stupid.
Yes.
They have made a martyr of him.
I was just mentioning that.
I had never heard the name Charlie Kirk.
Really?
Never had. And now I've heard him say several genius things that only came to my attention after his untimely demise.
If you didn't want his words getting out, the worst possible thing to do would be to assassinate him, because now everybody, Father, you had never heard him before,
God rest his soul,
are hearing his words. The unfortunate thing, too, is he had just interviewed an Orthodox priest. He was looking into Orthodoxy. He was on Tucker Carlson talking about, it sounded like our class. The reason why people are joining, and he's talking from a 31-year-old perspective. He says, the reason why people are joining the Orthodox Church is because they want ancient, they want beautiful, they want stable, they don't want change, they don't want, hey, we're going to have like a gay female pastor now and everyone's just going to be okay with it. They don't want that. That's what's so tragic from my perspective, too. Somebody that's knocking on the door of truth and is silent.
We were talking about this earlier. The death of this young man, 31 years old, with a young wife and children who were present there when he was brutally murdered, brutally assassinated. I saw an interview with a young man, 18-year-old man, who was present and saw it. And he was very honest to say, I'll never be the same. He'd never seen a person die. And what we have to bear in mind, how horrible this is. And the death of this young man, political influencer, said some things that very much accord to what we believe. He seemed to be interested in Orthodoxy. And I understand we've talked about, people are extremely upset because that optic, the last time something like this has happened, where a public figure has been publicly assassinated, where people saw him die,
right,
was John F. Kennedy and RFK. So there's not a generation that has witnessed this, and particularly those were individuals, they were left-wing, Democrats, whatever. I'm not saying anything bad, but this is the first time that people on the right have experienced the same thing. And I think it's certainly natural and understandable that people are deeply moved and deeply concerned and deeply upset. Because we see, person, brutally murdered. I would only say to my fellow Orthodox Christians that we have to put this in perspective. Right now, as we're talking, Israeli tanks and bombs and planes are attacking and killing our people in Gaza.
Yes,
they're being murdered. I pray, as everyone who knows comes to the monastery, I pray for two young men, Maxim and Timothy, little children, 8, 9, I think. And they were serving an altar on one Sunday, and shells came and blew up the church and killed them. And so, as we remember, as people in the world remember this young man who was murdered yesterday, I asked the Orthodox people not to forget him, but not to forget our people as well. Right? A case could be made that Maxim and Timothy are saints. They were killed while they were serving in the altar. And also, it's pointed out, we see in the news every day. In Ukraine, 7,000 people a week, young men, the vast majority are Orthodox Christians are
Yes.
dying, and Orthodox people do not seem to be upset about this or concerned about this. Where Father talks about, sometimes we're praying in this very sort of rote way. This is a blood letting of our people.
Yes.
The devil is attacking us in a real way. So whatever we are concerned about, various people, this young man who was murdered, don't forget to pray for the people who are Orthodox Christians who we have ability to pray for in a very particular way. And don't forget the fact that the Orthodox Church is under attack in a way that is unbelievably, incomprehensibly
Yes.
powerful.
And just adding to that, also, let us not despond when we hear these accounts of war and of the killing of innocents. Remember the Screwtape Letters and
Exactly.
The nephew demon writing to his uncle demon, and the uncle's responding, "You're delirious. What's going on with you? Oh, I see. You're drunk. You're drunk with the delights of war."
Yes.
And he says, "I sympathize. Everyone loves a good war." He says, "But don't forget, war brings out the best in so many people.
Yeah.
It brings out acts of heroism and self-sacrifice, and that's the last thing we need."
Absolutely,
So-
absolutely. But I would also contend that we have to also look at this is spreading.
I was going to
not
say,
something
Father,
that's-
it's not just this one instance. It's the lady on the bus or the train. It is the attempted assassination of the President of the United
Yeah,
States.
and-
It seems it's not ending.
And I
This,
understand
like,
that the lady, I don't know what her name was.
she was a Ukrainian refugee.
Ukrainian
Irina, I believe,
refugee
yeah.
fleeing from the Ukraine
Yeah.
and then murdered there. And I understand this got a lot of people's attention because it was a horrible tragedy. But, as of yesterday, 35 million children were aborted
Yes.
around the world as of yesterday. 35 million. The Joker says, when everything's going according to plan, people are happy, even if the plan is horrific.
Yeah.
And so this is, again, I don't mean to diminish anyone's concern, but Orthodox Christians, I understand people outside the church, but people in Orthodoxy have to have a sense of perspective. I looked at various comments on Facebook yesterday, various people, and some Orthodox
Probably
Christians.
not a good idea.
No, never a good idea. But
Not
they
a
were
good
saying,
idea.
I've lost hope. How do you lose hope?
That's not Christian.
How do you lose hope?
Yeah.
Our ancestors, our recent spiritual ancestors in the Russian church, have gone through times that make this like nothing. So I think we have to react properly. We have to pray for the families, Charlie's wife and kids.
Yeah.
And we have to put things in perspective. But I would call on all Orthodox Christians, when they interact with people outside the church, to not stoke hatred and vengeance and violence, but to be beacons of light and truth and hope.
Father, you mentioned to me in a text, because we were actually recording videos that
Yeah.
will be published last week when all of this went down. We got texts, our phones.
Right before Theosis.
Yeah, right before Theosis. Our phones were kind of going at it. And I messaged you later on in the night. I said, this is really big. Like, I can tell that this is, even Father Nathan mentioned, this is a big deal. How do we stay at that meta level? You mentioned that as clerics, our job is to keep people calm and peaceful as much as possible.
And literally praying for our, let's not say enemies, or opponents. The country right now is deeply divided.
Yes.
And we, as Orthodox Christians, again, we are by and large conservative, certainly on moral issues. But we can't demonize people who disagree with us. Even if they're wrong, we can say they're wrong. And this is something really that the victim yesterday, he was all about. Now, if he handled things, maybe he was a little confrontational, whatever. But he believed in the notion that we should talk to each other, right? That we should not demonize each other.
Yeah, that's what he was doing. He
Right.
was literally going
Right.
to liberal campuses that he knew opposed
Right.
what he's doing,
Right.
and shaking up. Unfortunately, a lot of times when somebody's worldview is challenged to the point where they don't have the arguments and the justification to back up their beliefs, they turn very violent.
I think what we learned yesterday about that is that understanding of the country has gone out with powdered wigs. the country right now is just too deeply divided to do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I think
That's really sad.
It is sad, but I mean, it's been a long time coming, because one of your first reaction when we heard about this is that this is like the 60s. You couldn't do that kind of stuff in the 60s for the most part. You know, we're in a.
I mean, you had Kent State. You had a lot of bad stuff going on.
A lot of bad
multiple
stuff. And
assassinations.
again,
that's why I said that. It feels like, as Father Nathan was mentioning, it's like the class warfare. It's certain groups are bad. You know, you see, it just has that feeling of revolution. Father Deacon, is that what the devil wants? He wants us to tear down our existing structures to make it easier for him. It certainly seems like some of this is demonic possession.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, revolution is like a means of creating change very starkly and very suddenly. And it does so to disrupt...
peace.
Well, I mean, eventually peace, moral institutions and development. And it's usually done by means of violence. There's very little peaceful type of revolution, because there's usually a usurpation going on. There's a change of power. But all of this, this revolution, I mean, this is happening all the time. It's been happening for centuries in one way or another somewhere. It's happening within the Orthodox Church. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
So
even within Protestantism, a lot of people don't know that the Reformation was very bloody. The Anabaptists were killing the Lutherans and all of this stuff. This is Father Seraphim Rose writes about it. This desire for revolution is for a quote unquote new man, and it's really the devil's plan, right? New Christianity, new man, new church. Let's throw out the old. We don't need the old. We don't need old, beautiful buildings. We need like square boxes of drywall, right? We don't need the old McDonald's with the plaything. We need
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I know, right? Because we have kids. It's like it used to be fun. You used to have a birthday there, and now it stinks. It's terrible. It just looks like
square.
One of the reasons that religion is become so passé and virtually non-existent in Europe is the religious wars.
Yes.
The devil got people to think it's better for me to go and take a sword and kill my enemy who disagrees religiously than to not do so. So they were so tired of the religious wars that they became tired of religion. And this is what false religion produces. It produces this hatred and disgust. And so when we see, particularly, I think Father Deacon is alluding to, when we see like Orthodox Christians turning weapons on each other, this is painful for us.
Or when people are using the church to do this. I mean, even
hiding behind
this might be controversial, but
we love controversy. Please,
the baptism of Rus, we like to depict it in iconography as this glorious event where all these people are being harmoniously baptized in the river. What they don't show is the people who are not choosing to accept this are usually probably being killed.
Right.
To the most degree. So we see how even when you take something good, it can be bastardized, it can be abused, because humans like to do that.
And this is something that has traditionally, with some exceptions, been alien to Eastern Christianity versus Western Christianity. The notion of converting at sword point, with that exception, is rare, whereas in the West it was considered the norm.
Yeah,
and and you talk about karma. There's a bloody sword involved in the Reformation and the Latins.
We also have to be leery of being too hasty with assumptions, because there's no historical evidence that anybody was killed for refusing to be baptized Orthodox Christian at the baptism of Rus. And there's a very interesting.
I think it's in the primary chronicle, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe so.
I'm
not aware of any.
They were pagans, obviously. They're worshiping Perun.
Yeah.
But I think what Father is alluding to, it was not really a voluntary thing.
This was the new state religion.
Definitely.
He was
different
than
this happened again during the Niconian reforms with the old believers. This political
definite abuses,
right? In the name of change.
There's a book entitled "Atheist Delusions," written by an Orthodox Christian, who doesn't make a point of being an Orthodox Christian. I had to go and look that up. But it's called Atheist Delusions, and he basically challenges the historical viewpoint that has become the accepted status quo, that religious wars were all fought in the name of religion. He points out, well, they may have used religion as an excuse, but very rarely did it have anything to do with religion at all.
Yeah,
And,
it's usually never tied. And when people like to, point the finger and say, well, your church, your religion has done all these evils, it's like, well, you have to divorce the person from the actual institution.
Well, also, when we stack up against the Soviet Union and Communist China,
It's nothing.
it's a drop in the bucket. Whatever abuses we have, hundreds of
And
millions.
that is the philosophy of godlessness. That is the philosophy of no religion. That's what atheism produces, is mass death.
Stalin's the one who said a single death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic.
Yeah, exactly.
And Mao didn't even bother to say that. He just killed 100 million people. And because his nation was so vast, people didn't notice until lately. So yeah, I agree with Father. We don't want to. Religion can be abused, but it's not the religion itself. It's people. I mean, Stalin was theoretically Orthodox, and the little mustache man was theoretically Catholic.
The painter.
But come on.
Yeah. I want to get to, we have more people in the chat than we ever had. All glory to God. May you all be here for the right reasons, hopefully. I want to do live audience questions. I want to do live chat questions. George, if you could start assembling those and sending them to me. I want to point out the demonic possession as a reality. We see a lot of this, of course, in the New Testament, very much so. This is what Christ's doing. Father Nathan, if you could actually read from Matthew right there, and I want your comment on the very end of the passage.
When he had come to the other side, to the country of the Gadarenes, there met him 2 demon-possessed men, coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass that way. And suddenly they cried out, saying, "What have we to do with you, Jesus, you Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now a good way off from them there was a herd of many swine feeding. So the demons begged him, saying, "If you cast us out, permit us to go into the herd of swine." And he said to them, "Go." So when they had come out, they went into the herd of swine. And suddenly the whole herd of swine ran violently down the steep place into the sea and perished in the water. Then those who kept them fled, and they went away into the city and told everything, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they begged him to depart from their region.
This is what is so interesting. They asked him to leave. He went there, got rid of the demons, and they said, "No, you need to go away. Please leave." Why is that? He's there doing a divine, godly thing. To us, it would be objectively good. This rage maniac is freaking out. But they asked, "No, we don't want you to do that. Leave."
They were more comfortable with him being there.
Is that where we are as humanity right now? It hasn't changed that much?
We're more comfortable in keeping the other as the other than interacting with them. Because then you imagine and go, well, what are we going to do with this guy? Where are we going to place him? They were more comfortable with him being in a bad state than doing the work of reintegrating him into their society. And that's sick and that's bad, but that is very typical in many cases of fallen society.
Father Nathan, you just read, "And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they begged him to depart from the region." The entire city. I sent the fathers an article earlier by Metropolitan Ticon, and he was talking about, is this a reference to how a country can become completely, almost demonically possessed? And he brings up, like Soviet Russia, he brings up other examples, but it's not just 1 or 2 guys that come out and said, "Please leave." It's like the whole city is not okay with what just happened.
Well, I'm reminded, of course, I'm reminded of the story of a certain monk who, during Great Lent, became very hungry, and all the cook stoves were all turned off for the first week of Great Lent. But he found an egg somewhere, and there was no way to cook it. The stoves were off, and so he took a candle for prayer, and he held the egg over the candle with tongs and was trying to
hard-boiled the
egg with the candle. Well, the abbot was walking past the door, and he thought, thought he'd check in on him. He knocked on opened the door and came in. He said, "Father, what are you doing?" And the poor monk fell on his knees and he said, "Forgive me, Father Abbot, the devil made me do it." At that moment, the devil popped out from behind the corner. He said, "No, you came up with that on your own.
Right.
I've been sitting here watching and studying how you can cook an egg over a candle."
Right.
So that was a long way of saying, I don't think the devil had to possess the entire city in order for them to come out and ask Jesus to get out of their comfortable way of life.
Yeah.
There was the economic factor as well. They were making a tidy living off of these pigs, who they, as Jews, had no business having anything to
Right.
do
They
with.
were already sinning.
Exactly. And they didn't want Jesus messing with their economic lifestyle.
Yes.
And so they preferred to have a few demoniacs running around, but to be making their tidy
money
living off the
coming in,
pigs.
yeah.
Exactly.
Just the price of doing business.
A little bit like maybe some of you have read Watership Down, and it was a story of rabbits living in the wild.
I saw the movie.
Somewhat,
Made me cry.
Oh goodness, that's a horrible movie.
It made me cry.
It's a nightmare. The book is beautiful,
Right.
and there's a scene where they come to a rabbit warren where the rabbits are all very well fed and a little bit off, and they discover that. Spoiler alert! Plug your ears. They discover that nearby there's a hunter who just simply keeps feeding them with fresh vegetables and every now and then snaring a few.
Right.
And they know what's going on, but they keep eating the vegetables, and they're willing to sacrifice a few of their number now and then for the sake of a comfortable way of life. So maybe a bit analogous.
Father Deacon, if you would actually read from St. John of Carpathos this quote here, and then I want to just hit on demonic possession one more time as a reality, and then we'll go to some audience questions.
Fire makes iron impossible to touch, and likewise frequent prayer renders the intellect more forceful in its warfare with the enemy. That is why the demons strive with all their strength to make us slothful in attentiveness to prayer, for they know that prayer is the intellect's invisible weapon against them.
Some people don't believe, in possession. It's only in horror movies, I mean, you and I have seen it up close. It's something that I'll never forget.
I've seen it.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you say to those that just believe it's fantasy? How real is it? And how much should we be praying, as St. John said?
A lot. It definitely does exist. And as you said, many of us, unfortunately, have seen something like this. And it's quite frightening,
Yes.
to be honest.
It is.
And it's also quite interesting because the things that we read about in Scripture about how these demons act, we like to kind of characterize them as like almost a caricature, right? In modern media, we see like demons are like this, but really they appear just like you and I, right? And that's why they harbor some sort of vessel, and their unwillingness to let go is astonishing.
Yes.
And that must mean that there is something so valuable that they're willing to come within and to kind of destroy a person from within.
Yeah.
We talked about in our class on psychology and psychiatrists and how the church views them and how best to employ their expertise. So one question that arises is the person simply mentally ill, or are they demonically possessed? And in pre-revolutionary Russia, it was well known that people could be demonically possessed, but that wasn't necessarily the catch-all reason for their behavior. And one of the tests that they would actually employ, as I understand, maybe Father, you know of more detail, or you, Father Stefan, was they would offer someone who was suspected of demonic possession, they would offer him a plate of glasses of water, all of them ordinary water except for one. All of them holy water except for one. And the one glass was ordinary water. And if the man was demonically possessed, he would invariably, every time, choose the glass of ordinary water and ignore the other glasses full of holy water.
Right.
Yeah, they really don't like holy water.
I think thinking on what...
So that's real in the movies when you see that.
Right.
They really don't like that.
No, holy water and holy things have an objective value. I think the
So
question...
symbols matter,
Yeah.
is what you're saying. Yeah.
I think the question, when we're talking about those men who, with the pigs, and they came out and told Jesus to leave, versus the demoniac, And I think as human beings, we're more frightened by the demoniac. But who was doing the greater evil? It was the non-possessed men.
Right.
Because they were in full possession of their faculties.
They knew
and
they were doing bad.
They literally rejected the Lord. So I think the canons make this clear, I think when we talk about possessed, we act as if they're the most evil people ever. Not necessarily. There have been saints who have been possessed.
Yeah,
right.
we read
and
about
it even says in the
book,
canons that if you can commune somebody who's possessed, as long as they're not like flailing around and doing
some
crazy.
people don't know they're even
Some
possessed.
people don't know. So I think when we talk about
Which
possession,
is interesting. That's pre-lust.
I think there's also a false notion to think when some person does some great evil, they're possessed, right? That only the devil could do that. As Father pointed out in his lovely egg story.
It's not his story. He didn't roast the egg. Did you, Father?
We
Come
know.
clean.
We know. Right. Come on, man.
Conjecture.
That was very autobiographical.
Father Nathan was roasting the egg.
Right.
There we go.
But the notion is we can do evil ourselves. We have the capacity. Yes. So we can't...
that's the real scary thing.
That's the real scary thing. It's not the person who is, on drugs, and it's the person who, in full possession of their faculties, chooses evil.
Yeah.
And these people exist. It seems irrational, it seems crazy, but they exist. The devil doesn't need to tempt them because they're already there.
Can I ask a question, Sean? Father, can you comment on how people become demonically possessed? Because that's something I'm sure everybody's wondering.
That's a great question.
There's
a sort of the modern myth is you must have done something morally evil to be allowed to be possessed. But then I think the fathers are more clear about this or more nuanced about this. I think we also have to understand that there's demonic influence. Somebody who's in the biz, they call it being demonically obsessed, and this is like somebody who's doing magic or whatever, who is like fascinated with demons, but not actually physically possessed. People who are physically possessed. This is very rare, but there are cases where this comes on somebody as like cancer. It's not necessarily that they have done something immoral that led them to that. So I think we have to be careful. Some of the notion that everyone who has been possessed is somehow evil. So ultimately the answer, Father, is God permits it for whatever reason.
But
right?
Isn't it true, Father, that it's usually due to it's not usually for no reason whatsoever, like cancer.
Right.
Although even cancer so often is due to environmental factors.
Right.
And you're aware, of course, you remember the patristic account of the man whose wife took on the appearance of a horse.
Right.
And the elder explained this is because you haven't communed in years.
Right.
And
I would say that probably, I mean, I haven't done a very detailed research, probably in most cases, that there is some sort of moral culpability.
Yeah.
But we have to acknowledge there's the fact that's not 100% of the cases. There are cases of people we know in the Synaxarion, we know in the life of the church, of people who have been demonically possessed who did nothing. It was not a moral culpability.
Right.
So why does God allow that to happen? I think God allows that to happen, so we have to be careful. We don't know. We don't know the causes. And I think it's like temptation writ large, right? We see somebody do evil, but we don't know what led them there. So that's why we're commanded not to judge. But I think probably, I mean, in most cases you hear of demonic obsession, particularly not just possession, it's people who are fascinated with dark things. They're fascinated with the occult. They're fascinated with various occult implements, and that
they've opened the doors somehow,
right. And the demons are there waiting, right? And so, but cases of actual possession are probably pretty rare.
Your favorite psychologist, Carl Jung,
yes,
who's possessed.
He wrote interesting about psychotics and how in that time the psychotics would be cast away from the rest of the society, and they would be treated, as almost kind of possessed. When in reality, he kind of saw that there was an existential crisis going on within the person. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but he, interestingly enough, uses this word, metania, this transformation. And we see this kind of progress, the idea that many people, the youth, but also people in their midlife, they experience this existential crisis and they start looking for answers.
Yes.
And this looking for answers allows them to go down all sorts of paths. And what's common today, is this introduction of psychedelics
Yes.
as a great means of
Pierce the veil.
Yes, we must
Yes.
pierce the veil to the point where, the veil has entrapped us
Yes.
into a certain way of thinking that there's no even need for demonic possession because now our brains have shifted. But knowing that there is this natural curiosity that people have as to why they are alive, what is the meaning that they must have.
Why am I here?
There is this attraction to something that is spiritual within them that is naturally there. And nowadays we're seeing that there is a strong pull to the darker side as the fount of knowledge, Satanism.
Yeah.
But the overarching victory is with that which is good. So we can only go to that which is good because that's where we're coming from as people. So when we're Father Nathan asked about this psychological type of perspective on almost this notion of being possessed, it's all coming from a very real spiritual place that even those who are practicing faith or not practicing faith are susceptible to, and even more so why we have to turn away from it.
Yeah, spiritual warfare is very real. Conspiracies are very real. The devil's trying to drag us down to hell.
I'm reminded of Dr. Faust, the myth there, because in certain versions of the story, he wants this power to do good because there's a plague in the city. So he wants to cure people, and he prays to God, and he's not getting what he wants immediately. So he starts, first it's occult lore, and then whatever, and then finally it's in making a deal with the devil.
Ring of Sauron.
Right, and we see that too. Is like, we ask God for things and He doesn't give them, and then we're like, well, we're more merciful than God.
Yeah.
We know better.
Surely
than God.
I deserve this power.
Surely
I can use it for good.
Why
right?
is God letting this happen? If He's so good, it's because we don't understand. And we have to. There's again, as Orthodox Christians, we have to see providence, right? There's a great. Father likes to talk about C.S. Lewis in his book, The Great Divorce. It was all they're going through hell, and one of the people there is this very modernist bishop who talks about. Jesus, it's such a shame that he was killed at such a young age, because if he had lived, his views would have matured and it would have been more interesting, And there's no, he's God. This is part of what.
What a stupid thing to say.
No,
I'm sorry.
but is it really that different from what people think
No, you hear
today?
people say it, but it's like, what a...
Yeah, because they're failing to remember that Jesus is God.
Right.
Right? And so,
Say Jesus is Lord.
Jesus is Lord.
Exactly.
Say it to a Muslim in the Holy Land. And
Live
see what
audience.
kind of looks you get.
Live audience, if you have any questions, raise your hands. I want to give... we have lots of people in the chat, mostly just talking with each other, but it's fine.
Some of the stuff in the chat is
It's
crazy.
I know. Father, don't monitor the chat during the class. You're going to get distracted.
I know. I feel
Let me give some shout outs. Charlotte and Hedrick TV, hello. Brian Kaplan, hello. Rhonda says hello. Deacon Daniel's here. Hello. Brian, who else do we have? Jonathan Hill's here. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, John.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people. We've got Dr. Crispy Rothschild, one of the Ortho Bros. Welcome.
Is he a real Rothschild?
We don't ask.
We don't
We don't ask and we don't care, as long as he's Orthodox. Yeah, we got a lot of people here. Ephesians is back. Oh, we have a super chat. I didn't see
Is
that
the
one earlier.
Witchmaster back? Anyone know?
The Hill scared him off. Orthodox Christian Andrew for $4.99. Thank you, Orthodox Christian Andrew. Just started listening. Why is Herod referred to as a grandson in today's services?
Because he's his grandson?
Right, yeah.
He's the grandson of Herod the Great.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
I was going to say.
This is Herod Antipas, I think, that we're talking about today.
Right.
Who's the grandson of Herod the Great.
The
And the reason,
tetrarch,
there was a saying about Herod. They said it's better to be a pig in Israel than to be one of Herod's children.
Yep.
Because
Slow
you
Boy
were saved
Whiteboard
as a
actually
pig.
answered it. Herod Agrippa the first, grandson of Herod the Great. So
Right.
thank you. Thank you, Slow Boy, for being here too.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
on every Orthodox
So
channel.
many
I
Herods
see
to
you all
keep
the
track
time.
of.
Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I think this one
Does
really
anyone
kind of
have any
broke through.
questions?
Yes, let me get to the question. Sorry, I just wanted to give some shout outs. What is a martyr in the church? Excellent question.
A witness to Christ's death and resurrection, not a necessarily a physical witness. So again, when we were talking about the recent assassination, people are calling him a martyr. He's not a martyr from the Orthodox perspective,
Right.
Because he's not Orthodox. So you have to be you're a witness to the Orthodox faith. So and then killed. Usually it's blood. The term is used sort of loosely. My patron, St. Maximus the Confessor, is often referred to as well as a witness because they didn't kill him outright. They just kind of starved him and
Mine too. It's like, hey, let me
right.
drag you across the mountain trails until you die and starve to death.
So a martyr is somebody, an Orthodox Christian who dies in a way that glorifies Christ.
You might have noticed in the service today in the Akathist of St. John that he is referred to as the first martyr of the New Testament.
Yeah, it was a fantastic Akathist. I'm so glad we decided to do that.
Yeah,
It just the
I think
service
it's good.
today
I think we
incredible.
should do that when it's a feast day or something close.
You mentioned too an interesting thing in your sermon today that we really only celebrate 3 nativities, which is really, really interesting. And even in the Akathist, it's God and the Mother of God and St. John the Forerunner is like this level of like intercession, right? It's really
extremely important. And I mean, in many churches,
Christ
unfortunately,
says
not
so,
mine. He's on the iconostas there,
Yeah.
opposite, flanking one over from the Theotokos, or on
Right.
the other side, because of his importance. And he's referred to. He has got the greatest title in the world. He's the friend of Christ.
Yeah.
His close friend. That's awesome.
And he recognized him before he was even born.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
cool is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's something. Okay, to sum it up, this is a great question. To sum it up, what should the Orthodox Christian attitude be right now, given the heat in the country?
Humility.
Good answer.
And hopeful. We have to. If we are not hopeful in our Orthodox version of Christianity, then we have to do some soul searching. If we're no different from the Gentiles, as it were, and we're wringing our hands and we're pulling our hair out, then we have to say, where's our faith? Because nothing. And again, put it in perspective. There's people alive who went through World War II and concentration camps and gulags and atomic bombs and all these kinds of things. So, although it's a terrible thing, keep it in perspective is what I would say. Father, you want to?
No, that's excellent. I would only add that absolutely, and the flip side of that is we do know that Christ is coming again, and all of the things that will precede that, and so that's going to happen too. And if that's the time that has come, well, there's, it's not a lot of fun, but but it should have no effect on our hope. We should be hopeful for salvation.
If you know the script, then you shouldn't be surprised when the script is
We
playing
win
out.
at the end,
Right?
and I would
Exactly.
say
We win.
Right.
One other thing I would say.
It's good to be winning. Trust me.
Particularly on the case of the young man who was killed yesterday.
Yeah.
Wait until we actually know who did it.
Yeah.
Everyone, the second the poor man was killed, everyone knew exactly who did it. And we have to understand we have ideas.
Right.
And we have notions about things based on reason. And they may or may not be correct. I mean, we generally know there's a country called France, and and y'all are here. I mean, and that's a rational understanding that we can say with near certitude. But ultimately, the only things we can say with absolute certitude are absolute things, which are things of the faith. And I was talking to George the other day. It's like, I remember I grew up, the mustache man died under particular circumstances, and all the rational consensus
Allegedly,
right?
He
But then
lived
now
in Argentina.
Now it's been proven. It's been proven that what I had been raised and
no.
taught, and a rational person would assume was correct, was not.
Yeah, and we find out that 60 years later, 80 years later,
80
almost?
years later.
80 years later. That's crazy.
Again, I would say everybody, before you have your theories of what happened, spend 24 hours or more. Wait and to see what happens. And see what the situation is, and then we can deal with, that.
I would add, if you fathers permit me, that your conspiracy theory probably doesn't go deep enough. It goes much deeper, and it goes to the heart of what we've been talking about. It's the prince of this world. It's the ruler and principalities of the air. That's who, as St. Paul says, that's who our battle is against. And if we take our eye off that, that's exactly what he wants. He wants us to put down our armor, put down our, spiritual sword of prayer and aim it at somebody rather than the devil.
All the earthly conspiracies, the ones that are not immediately controlled by the boss in hell, are fighting over stuff.
Yeah.
All the stuff's going to burn up anyway.
Vapor,
so I'm
yeah.
not. I don't doubt. People say, "Oh, you're naive." I don't doubt there's conspiracies. There's millions of them going on right now.
Yes.
I do doubt there's a central conspiracy outside of hell, because the devil has no interest in sharing power with these people. He will destroy them too. They don't get out because he doesn't have the power to save them. So even his most devoted followers are doomed as well, like we heard in that section that Father read from St. Maximus. He's the God's enemy is an avenger, and he hates us. He has no allies. The people who worship him he considers the greatest fools, because he knows what he is. So I would say, yeah, we understand the conspiracy goes very, very deep, literally, into hell.
Exactly. Have you guys read Dostoevsky's book, Demons or the Possessed? I am currently reading it. What's your thought? It's fantastic. I definitely recommend it. Everything by Dostoevsky is so good. It's long, but it's so good. Fathers, anything else?
I haven't read it. I wish I'd love to. Have it not yet.
When you have like an entire summer or something like that, that'd be good. It's a weighty tome.
Get the Bolhansky translation.
Yeah.
Yes.
English.
Peviar and Bolhansky.
Yeah.
If you're going to read it in English, read it that.
How is sin death? Good question.
Sin leads to death. So sin is death, because sin is falling short of the glory of God. It is conforming our will to the will of the devil and not the will to God. So it leads to death because it leads to a separation from God's will. So it keeps us from all the things that are good.
That's exactly what Scripture says. It doesn't usually say sin is death. It says the wages of sin are death.
Right.
That's the natural result.
They're obviously a connection, but they're like so many things. They're distinct.
This is a good.
When you're not moving, you're dead, right? So
Right.
if we're trying to move towards the state of beyond being, right, we can't if we are just stagnant in one place.
St. Maximus makes this very clear that God is life, and we should be constantly moving towards our telos, which is life. And if we sin, we're moving away from it. So we are moving away from life because God is life. So when you sin, you're actually choosing death over life. You're choosing not good. You're choosing the opposite of good.
Saint Athanasius basically said on the Incarnation, I believe, I haven't read it in a while, that we were continually moving towards non-being.
Exactly.
We never get there.
God is being. He's beyond being, but he is the giver of existence.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we to use a Maximian phrase, it's failure to conform to our logos.
We love using Maximian phrases at the St. Maximus Society,
Is there
Father.
any other?
Dr. Crispy Rothschild asks, this is a good question, is there a difference from when I was ignorant, when I was possessed by secularism, agnosticism, and atheism, and indulge in my passions, and now when I sin and know the truth?
Yes.
Why?
Because you have much less excuse. You've been told the truth. You've been given the power of the Holy Spirit through the sacred mysteries of the Church. You have access to confession. So again, the wages are much more serious. Now, people say, well, then I should not be Orthodox. Now, it's still bad. I mean, you still go to hell, but here you have a chance of getting yourself out. So,
Confession, real repentance.
and one thing one thing I do want to talk about is maybe we can do it at some other point, but we need to talk about the sacraments from Orthodox perspective.
We were going to talk about it tonight,
Right.
but it just seems like everyone's mind is on something else.
And we have to, as shepherds, we have to respond to what people are concerned about.
Once again, coming back to C.S. Lewis, read the last few pages of The Last Battle.
So this question, Father, is, are the Screw Tape Letters a good read for an Orthodox catechumen? Would you say that C.S. Lewis is good for a catechumen to read?
Yes.
Okay.
I would. Maybe Father can comment on that.
I would say there's some C.S. Lewis that is, I would say, in very specified, directed doses. Screw Tape Letters is very good. It's a little, to me, it comes off a little kidsy. a little, but I'm kind of a dark person anyway. The Great Divorce, I think, is very good, but
Yeah.
again, it has a lightness to it that needs to be directed. And I would say Mere Christianity is extremely popular. I would not recommend that because Mere Christianity means there's like a Christianity
Yeah.
that is sort of pre-denominational, and you can kind of stay there. And I think that I've seen that book keep people out of the church because I have C.S. Lewis. No, you need the fathers.
Father Nathan, is one thing that you like about the Screwtape Letters the fact that you're seeing these demons converse and they're relatable?
I haven't thought it that way. No,
Okay.
I don't think it's not so much that. It's that the devil's greatest asset is invisibility.
Yeah.
And the Screwtape Letters paint a vivid picture of who we're actually at war with.
No,
That's what I mean. Like
tricks that he uses
it's
against
taking
us.
words
good
that we
book.
often think ourselves, and it's like, oh, I've thought that before.
Yeah,
You know,
and it shows you
it's-
this is where it's coming from.
Exactly, yeah.
I've used the analogy in confession of, people say, I'm tormented by these thoughts. And you say, these are from the devil. Right. And once you realize that this is not bubbling up from some bottomless well within you, this is the monkey in the cage flinging filth at you.
Right,
And the
yeah.
minute you realize, where's that coming from? Oh, you
And-
move away from the cage
Why does
and
it
ignore
smell?
the filthy monkey.
And I think any of his works, if they're properly directed by competent priests, are useful because sometimes the reality is people need to read sections of books and not whole books.
Are people being stabbed and shot? Is that the devil or is that people?
Both.
Or is it both? Yeah.
Both. The devil can't do it himself without permission from God. So it is people cooperating with the devil. And so, every particular negative, evil act is not
So what we
sure-
just saw is definitely from the devil.
Well, I mean, evil is not from God.
Right,
Not
exactly.
a lot of other choices, but we by conforming ourselves to evil, we become just as we can become Christians, we can also become devils.
And yet, remember
That's terrifying.
Gollum at the end of The Lord of the Rings. Even Gollum may have a part to play, and play a part he did.
Yes.
At the loss of his own life.
Yeah.
In helping Frodo to get rid of the ring. And so God knows what the ultimate result of this evil act will be. It may be that more people will become familiar with the work of Charlie Kirk than ever would have had he lived out his life and died a peaceful death in his own bed.
Yeah.
He
Father Deacon, anything bad?
died with his boots on.
Well, to answer the question, I think it's foolish to think that just because you've now become Orthodox, that you suddenly all of your bad habits and all of your struggles in this life just go away.
They're not going to go away. Yeah. That's what I tell all the people that have been baptized here. I'm like, now you're at war.
Yeah, but
with
this
this,
isn't
like, yeah.
and suddenly now like it's a big moral failing. And I know you're now better equipped to deal with these issues. So it's not that there is, sin is moving you away from God. We have to remember that we're the ones that crucified Christ, right? We crucify him every day. So we should be vigilant about what we're doing. Because when we transform ourselves, then the world transformed around us.
Do you have any live questions, George, Cecilia? Are there any more audience questions? Mostly just chat. Thank you so much. We've had a lot of new faces that I'm familiar with. Thank you for following our channel. So it
Didn't
seems.
you have a question, George? You didn't have one? You raised your hand.
I was trying to say the questions that.
No, you were sending the questions. Any other live audience questions?
Yeah,
Thank-
I have one.
Wait,
Yes,
raise your
live
hand.
audience
This
question.
is really far off the topic, but earlier it was mentioned that the Protestant Reformation came with a lot of bloodshed.
Yes, Protestant
I
Reformation
was
and bloodshed.
Can y'all comment any more on that? I had no idea.
Sure. So there were the Protestant reformers kind of like, doing battle against each other. There was a group called the Anabaptists. You have essentially you have Zwingli, you have Luther, you have Calvin, and these groups actually are kind of vying for political power because it's very clear at this point that there is a Reformation taking place. And people are leaving, the Latin Church. As Orthodox, we would call ourselves the Catholic Church, but they're leaving, the Roman Catholic Church anyway. And there are huge theological disagreements because the Anabaptizers were the rebaptizers, and people thought that was heretical. So they were actually murdering them, and you see a lot of people leaving. This is the reason why this country was kind of like founded is they're facing political persecution from Calvinists, from the Zwingliites, from Luther. There's actually a lot of murder going on. And you see this is, Father Deacon mentioned it earlier, unfortunately, there's always a political element in this world, and that infiltrates the church. And I think a lot of the people, the reformers, probably thought that they had. It's kind of stupid because it's like, hey, look, the church has been around forever, but I just discovered this. This is, the church was doing it wrong forever. And now, all you need is faith, and you don't need to work or do anything. Luther wanted to take James out of the Bible because it didn't really fit his faith alone narrative. But they actually killed each other. Yeah, it was a very, very bloody time in Europe, and you see a lot of nation states start to. A lot of the German princes were like, "Hey, there's a really good book actually by Father Josiah Trenum, Rock and Sand." How a lot of the German princes wanted a new state religion so they can get out from under the Pope.
Well,
Right?
there's also they could seize all the property.
Correct. Oh, 100%.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of a lot of cash involved.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
they did.
And they did that, and of course people didn't necessarily all go quietly. So there was a lot of murder and a lot of bloodshed. It was very, very bloody. And then when these different Protestant nations fought against each other, they fought against the Catholics.
Yeah.
The 30 Years' War was essentially this long, bloody religious war that did almost as much devastation to Europe as did World War I and World War II.
Yeah, very true. Any other live audience questions? Thank you so much, all of our online people. Thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing this stream. Fathers, do you have anything else to add? Conspiracy, demonic possession, I think we covered it a lot. The temperature in the room, hopefully we've lowered it a little bit.
Well, again, I think one of the things is people, I saw things, again, I looked at Facebook, which I probably shouldn't have.
Don't look at
and
Facebook.
there was one person who was saying something, now we need to pass out guns and the thing is...
You said this was coming from a Christian, too.
Yeah, theoretically.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, the more innocent blood is shed, it begets more blood and more blood. And as Orthodox Christians, we have to work out our salvation. We don't need blood on our hands. We have a question.
Yes, live audience question.
Ooh, I knew we.
Is there anywhere where the devil and his demons can't go? Like, for example...
Is there anywhere where the devil and his demons can't go?
Like, for example, when we go to confession, can they follow us?
Can they follow us into church? Into confession?
Absolutely. In the book of Job, we hear that the devil showed up for an audience with God among God's
Right.
other angels, and so if he has access to the throne of God.
I read recently, and I'm not correcting you, Father, but I read recently, and I didn't fully understand it, but it was making reference, and it was a church father make reference that with the incarnation and the resurrection, the devil no longer has that kind of access to God.
Oh,
Right?
interesting.
This is I have to. Sometimes
Okay.
I read stuff, and again, I'm not.
No,
I don't
that's
know,
good.
But
That's good.
And I think that's an interesting notion because this source said that explains the devil's furiousness and anger because he no longer has that access.
Right.
So now he's operating he's more operating as an outsider. Yeah, I mean, ultimately the sort of cheating answer is they can only go anywhere with God's permission, right? So they're restricted, and that's why I think that quotation from Saint Maximus saying, "God's enemy and avenger," he allows the demons against their will to be used for our salvation.
They're like
But
subcontractors.
With God's permission, and I would add to that, with our permission, if we are inviting the demons along with us in our pride and our self-satisfaction in confession. If you come to confession and your confession is not wholehearted, it's with the desire of justifying yourself, well, then you're basically inviting the demons along with you for the ride.
Father, if I may, it may prove useful, Father Deacon, you'll testify to this, that the possession that we saw was from a lady in the confession line she was the next one in line about to step up to confess. And that's when the manifestation happened. Right. So clearly there's something there that the demons do fear.
I would only say on the flip side is that the Orthodox Church teaches that there's an angel of the altar.
Yeah.
So every church has a protecting angel. So I've seen demonic things in church, whatever. I've done an exorcism in a church, so obviously, but I think the notion is it's not really something that we should be focusing on in confession.
Pray to your guardian angel.
Yeah, but I encourage everyone should pray to their guardian angel regularly.
That's really
because
important.
It's an important thing, and we believe in it. Just like we believe in the devil, we believe in angels. And unfortunately, there's a lot more talk about demons than there are about angels.
Yeah.
And we need to look towards the angelic. We need to realize that these angels are there and they've been given to us as a protection.
Satan did not take the majority of the angels with him.
No,
the majority of the angels.
Symbolically, it seems like a third.
Right.
Because it says his tail took a third of the stars.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if that's a third of innumerable. Is, I don't know what kind of.
It's a lot, but it's not the majority.
It's certainly a lot.
Yeah.
There's an anecdote I'm reminded of, and maybe Father Nathan, you know this, of a hierarch visiting Holy Trinity Monastery in Jordanville. And the monk is showing them, around, the grounds of the monastery. And he says, I can see this is such a holy place. And the monk says, well, is it the icons or what is it? It's like, well, I see all the demons on your onion domes dancing around. So when there is so much grace, there is so much warfare on the other side going on as well.
And wasn't it the blessed Basil, the fool for Christ, who would make the sign of the cross and bow outside the bars, but throw rocks at the churches. And when asked why, he said, well, I'm bowing to the guardian angels left outside the bars, and I'm throwing rocks at the demons left outside the church.
Yeah.
Interesting. Father Maximus, you also mentioned that there is a certain period of time, because a lot we're talking to catechumens and newly baptized and about to be baptized. There is a period of time after you get baptized where you feel a lot of grace, and then there seems to be a stark reminder that now you're in the game, and the devils recognize that now you're on the playing field and you're here to play ball.
Absolutely.
Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like, and again, this is not theological, it just seems like in my experience that shortly after baptism, there's like a grace period.
Yeah.
It seems like God gives you a chance to sort of get your feet a little bit. And then, but after a period of time, we have to remember, because you're being tempted, that's not a bad thing. St. Athanasius says, without temptation, there's no salvation. It's not about not having temptation, it's about resisting it. Right? So, yes, but I think we have to be careful, because I think I've seen people use that as a justification to not come into the church. I've also seen it as people use it as justification to sort of like excuse their sin. So it seems to be, that's my experience, it seems to be the case. I don't know if the other fathers have had similar experience. But I've also seen like people like, will give like lay people will give these like dire warnings, and it's like some of the stuff is psychological too. If it's going to be really bad. Well, maybe not. Maybe just say, be, the same thing that you were baptized. Guard your garment. Come to confession regularly. Don't let your garment get that dirty. And then hopefully you won't be in a circumstance where you come into these great falls.
Fathers, I'd like you to close this out in prayer, but I'd like you to give just a 15-second recommendation to those that are watching right now that are angry over what's happening, maybe confused over what's happening, maybe scared about what's happening. What advice would you give them?
Let's go the opposite. Let's go younger to
Nah,
old.
I did, yeah. I think he's thinking about it.
You do that all the time. I think we have to start from you.
Yeah. I say the same stuff. You know. All right, Father.
Father Nathan,
you're the
here we
middle
go.
child.
Yeah.
You start.
Read the history books. Look at what we've been through. As Father said before, we've been through. What the world has been through doesn't hold a candle to most of the events that the fearmongers are trying to draw your attention to. It's Satan trying to distract you from the work of your salvation. Yeah. If you look at the history, what the world has been through, you'll see that what Facebook or the news is trying to blow out all out of proportion is all out of proportion.
Yeah, and I would.
If it bleeds, it leads. That's what when I was working in the newsroom as a reporter. That's what. Yeah. I
would say with that, that's very true. No, younger people particularly don't know history at all.
No.
Right, and they need to understand, because if you don't know history, you think, oh my God, the world's falling apart. Yes, It is. But it has been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Whole civilizations have risen and fallen, and they're gone. Who remembers the Hittites? They're gone.
They're gone.
You know? But I would also say, as I said earlier, it's going on now in other parts of the country. So we have, whatever people want to say about living in the country and their complaints, we have a very precious thing. All of us can basically live our lives and do what we need to do with some restrictions. But if we keep tearing at the strings, we keep pulling on it, we're going to be in a circumstance where we're going to go, 2025, those were the days. All we had is this little problem.
Yeah.
So if people are angry because they witnessed this horrific event, that they should say, they should turn that anger, which there's nothing to do with that anger. Pray for the wife. Pray for the children. The children have to deal with seeing their father massacred, and that can make people angry. But if you're just angry, that doesn't do anything. Pray for them. Pray for them. At long last, at the end of the day, when we've exhausted all other things, get on your knees and pray for these people, and pray for the country, and pray for your neighbor, and pray for peace. That's the most powerful thing we can do.
And pray for your own sins, which
Right.
renders your prayer acceptable to God.
Exactly. Now, Father's got some stuff, and so he's.
I've had enough time to think. If you're angry and you're fearful, you lack love, and if you don't have love, you need to cultivate it. I would recommend reading the Psalms and catechetical homilies, especially the famous one by St. John of Kronstadt that we read on Pascha.
That's Chrysostom.
Of Chrysostom, that we read on Pascha. That would be that's the ultimate, melting away of hate and of evil. So if you can let that Paschal joy into your heart, at least, on a regular basis, then you might be able to get rid of all that hate and anger.
Christ
I
is
have
risen,
one more
my
thing to
joy.
say.
One more thing.
Father Maximus always got one more thing to say. Nobody knows what's going to happen, and anyone who tells you what's going to happen is either a prophet, they're not, or they're overly confident in their assessments. What happened yesterday could be the turning point, and it could be
It's an interesting choice of words you
it
just
could be,
used, yeah.
And I'm not a second time. I'm not really doing it intentionally.
Because this is the name of this company.
It could be the beginning of the end, and or maybe not.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with if we decide to honor this man, those who loved him and respect him and pray for his family and children and see it as a great human tragedy. This young man, murdered before our eyes. And, the people who love him, what do you think he wants? You think he wants more blood? You think he wants other families to suffer? Other young or old people seeing their children and their wife? Nobody wants this. So don't be so confident that your predictions of what will happen, because I've seen where people will make dire predictions and then they get kind of sad when they don't happen. So let's hope that our dire predictions and our dire prophecies all come to naught. That's my final.
I would say to my conspiracy theory brethren out there, if you think everything's a conspiracy, you're 100% right. But read history like the fathers were saying, and you will realize that this is not new, and there's a meta-level conspiracy that we are all engaged in, especially if you're a Christian, but the church is the ark of salvation. That's just the advice that I would give. After reading history, I came to the truth of Holy Orthodoxy, because it survived this entire time.
I saw a joke about conspiracy theorists.
Uh-oh.
Two conspiracy theorists walk into a bar, and you think that's a coincidence.
Very good. And on that note, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We know it was a fruitful topic just based on our live audience. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us online. Thank you so much. We have a lot of new faces on there, a lot of well-known Orthodox people, so glory to God. Fathers, if you would take us out in prayer, I'd be so grateful.
To bless thee that Theotokos, ever blessed and most blameless and mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim, and beyond compare more glorious than the seraphim, who without corruption gave us birth to God the Word, the very Theotokos, thee do we magnify. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, and in the ages of ages. Amen. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Father, bless.
The prayers of our Holy Fathers, O Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on